technology and materials. It was a beautiful sight to see in its own way, to say the least. And walking through it, Quinn had a straight face as he took his steps carefully, glancing around the area. This job is so boring, Rona complained. There's never any exciting happening in the vampire settlement. Why is there even a position like this in the first place? Walking right now by Quinn's side was a regular vampire. He was middle-aged, or at least looked like it. There wasn't much that stood out about him, having a regular vampire hairstyle, not having overly good looks or large muscles, and the same could be said for his skills, which was why he was given the task as a guard for the ninth family. It's good that it's safe. There's less chance for the people to get hurt, Quinn replied as he continued to walk in his guard boots. They were tight around his legs and in all black. They were made of beast gear, but were at the intermediate level. It was the same for the rest of the equipment Quinn was wearing as well. A few shoulder pads with a belt wrapped around some trousers and a shirt. This was the uniform for the guards of the night.
Daily action started. Please wait.
Quinn had joined the Fortuna family, and as promised, Edvard was going to give him what he asked for, which was why the position that was assigned to him was as a guard. Something every family had, but wasn't used very often. There were vampires that went out on hunts on local planets, but those that went out had immediately formed.
Daily action complete. Please continue.
The dark night sky was out, and the crystals powering small lights throughout the settlement and houses could be seen everywhere. It was different from the regular cities on Earth that would have giant skyscrapers in the sky. The largest buildings were the castles, followed by the mansions and three-story houses that were built on top of each other. It looked more like what a village would have looked like in the olden times, instead of one with modern technology and materials. It was a beautiful sight to see in its own way, to say the least. And walking through it, Quinn had a straight face as he took his steps carefully, glancing around the area. This job is so boring, Rona complained. There's never any exciting happening in the vampire settlement. Why is there even a position like this in the first place? Walking right now by Quinn's side was a regular vampire. He was middle-aged, or at least looked like it. There wasn't much that stood out about him, having a regular vampire hairstyle, not having overly good looks or large muscles, and the same could be said for his skills, which was why he was given the task as a guard for the ninth family. It's good that it's safe. There's less chance for the people to get hurt, Quinn replied as he continued to walk in his guard boots. They were tight around his legs and in all black. They were made of beast gear, but were at the intermediate level. It was the same for the rest of the equipment Quinn was wearing as well. A few shoulder pads with a belt wrapped around some trousers and a shirt. This was the uniform for the guards of the ninth family. It had been a while since Quinn had joined the Fortuna family, and as promised, Edvard was going to give him what he asked for, which was why the position that was assigned to him was as a guard. Something every family had, but wasn't used very often. There were vampires that went out on hunts on local planets, those that went out on joint hunts with the humans on other vampires that went out on hunts on local planets, those that went out on joint hunts with the humans on other planets, and the castle vampires and more. On top of that, if one had a particular skill such as cooking, crafting, and marking out maps, they could also be invited to these teams, which meant that a guard was simply someone who wasn't strong enough or had no skills whatsoever to do anything. They would patrol the pooling area with the other guards from other families, trying to solve disputes. However, in the vampire settlement, there were rarely any arguments to begin with. Perhaps once in a while, someone needed help with moving some equipment, or another felt like they had slandered their name, or tried to cheat them out of money from a stall. Yet, it never got into a confrontation where they needed to use their fists. The most excitement they got was that sometimes the guards from one family would tease the other, and even fight from time to time. but it was all in good fun rather than due to arguments. If only I didn't do so bad on that assessment, Ronak sighed. Maybe I should save up some money, get some Dalkey blood, and try it the next one. There's a chance I can get promoted then, right? You know what happens to those people, right? Quinn replied. Either they end up dying when fighting beasts because their skills were overvalued, or they get caught before that even happens and end up in the same position as us. There are only a few that are able to learn from using the blood and keep their strength up. Besides, why wouldn't you want to be a guard? I think having an easy job is a good thing. Ronak started to shake his head. Someone like you would never understand the thrill of fighting. Ronak explained, a strong person wishes to display their skills. They are treated with great respect by the other vampires and heroes because they are the reason why we can live the way we can. They collect the crystals that run our society and make the energy we need to enjoy our life. On top of that, we are vampires. We have all this power because we are meant to fight. And here as a guard, when there is no sense of danger, how am I ever meant to improve? Ronak looked straight into the eyes of Quinn, but soon looked away. As I said, someone like you, who doesn't like fighting and looks far too handsome to ever have fought a day in his life, wouldn't understand. Maybe I should hire a teacher from one of the castles instead? Of course, Quinn knew a lot about fighting and a lot about war. It was a feeling that he would never forget. You should be happy that there is no war. People you care about die, and even if you are incredibly strong, sometimes there's nothing you can do. If you want to get stronger and fight for fun, that's up to you to decide. But I warn you, don't go around wishing for conflict to happen or wishing there is war. War is never good for anyone. Once in a while, Ronak noticed that Quinn would get like this, and when he did, he found it hard to argue or talk back. It was also the reason why he hadn't delved into the other's life too much, even though the two worked closely with each other. Just then, a bell sounded, and it continued to let out a noise. The second Ronak turned around, he already knew Quinn would no longer be by his side. Always when his shift ends, he leaves on the dot, Ronak smiled. Still, I can't help but like the guy for some reason, even if the two of us are nothing alike. Maybe we can do some training together next time, or I'll teach him a move or two. As the bell rang, Quinn had already rushed off to head home at the end of his shift. The house was in a pooling area, but it was based quite close to the Counts, and more that lived in the ninth family. He had always assumed that there was a reason why Edvard did this, maybe so he could keep an eye on him, but outside of meetings and such, the two never did meet. Bursting into his house, which was relatively small, but detached from any other homes, Quinn had a large smile on his face as he could see Layla sitting down knitting. It was a hobby she had decided to take up, because right now, although it wasn't hard to move, she was increasingly uncomfortable. Her belly was quite a bit larger than before, looking similar to a human that was ready to give birth any day now. However, it had only been a couple of months. I know you like being with me, but you should really spend a bit more time with your friends at work. It's been 2 months, and I don't think you have gone out with any of them once, Layla said, as she received a kiss on the cheek from Quinn, and he placed his head on her belly, trying to listen to see if he could hear anything inside. I know, but it's an important time. I think the baby could pop out at any moment. Then after I take care of you and the baby for a while, I promise I will go out with the others and try to socialize like you asked, Quinn said with a smile. In the time that Quinn had been here, Jim Eno still hadn't returned. On top of that, there were no big events. The world was just running as it had been doing. The only slightly strange thing was the competition of gathering crystals for the family. In the past, Quinn understood because factions and other families were competing with each other for better equipment. It also made sense because they were at war, but the basic crystals were enough to power the settlement. Was it just for the sake of getting stronger if a problem occurred? Even the humans used to do that on Earth, so it made some sense. Still, there wasn't much to go on or any trouble, and Quinn wouldn't try to find out what happened elsewhere, until Layla felt comfortable as well. Just then, Minnie opened the door from her room, rubbing her eyes as if she had just been asleep, but soon ran over to Quinn and jumped up to him. He lifted her up in the air, and the big, cheeky smile he was used to appeared. So, tell me, are you excited about tomorrow? Quinn asked. Of course I am. It's my first day of school, Minnie said. It was a worrying matter for Minnie to be going to school, but it was something that was required from vampires of a certain age, and it was hard to explain that Minnie was far older than them. Mentally, still, she was young, so in the end, they thought it would be good for her. However, she was a vampire that had, perhaps, the equivalent strength to a low-level vampire lord, so they just hoped that she wouldn't cause any trouble.
Boo!
ready for a frightfully good time? Most days at the vampire settlement were quiet as a whole. There would be times when vampires were injured while exploring the rest of the planet. Unlike the last vampire planet, this one was full of dangerous beasts. Although it wasn't completely dangerous, because as far as Quinn knew, there wasn't a demon tier beast here, but he knew beasts could evolve, so there was always the chance that there would be one someday. This was why at times, vampires who were too confident in themselves would go out and get injured. However, the settlement would never get attacked. It was almost as if the beasts knew how dangerous a place was. Although there was one time when Quinn was patrolling the outskirts of the area, he had seen a beast and locked eyes with it, releasing just a little bit of his energy and pressure that made it run away in seconds. Thinking of the dangers out there while in the kitchen, Quinn had used his shadow for a brief second and pulled out a particular crystal. You still haven't used it after all this time? Alex said. Are you perhaps taking my suggestion to heart since it's that day? The crystal that was in Quinn's hand was the upgrade crystal, but not just any upgrading crystal. It was one that could turn an item from the demon tier into a godslayer tier. I don't think your suggestion is a bad one. It's just, for one, Minnie doesn't have any demon tier items.
Good morning.
I would have to either leave the place for a while or go with one of the scouting teams. Then, if she did get a godslayer tier item, would that make her at the godslayer tier level, or is it simply an item? What I don't want to do is make the Celestials target her. She is strong already with the energy from when I was a Celestial, Quinn explained. Daddy, I'm ready, a voice shouted out, and coming around the corner, Minnie was seen. She looked up and could see a flicker of a shadow disappearing, and a shocked look on Quinn's face. Dad, did you just use your powers? Minnie complained, pouting out her big cheeks. You said that Minnie was never ever to use her powers, unless she felt like her life was on the line, and that Minnie shouldn't complain because you were going to do the same. Quinn was struggling with what to say. He didn't want to be a hypocrite, and at the same time, he wanted Minnie to grow up with a strong sense of values. If she couldn't trust her father over something like this, then would it mean all of his words would become useless? You two should hurry up, otherwise you're going to be late for work, and you're going to be late for your first day at school, Layla said, as she stopped by the hallway door just outside the kitchen. She's right, let's hurry up now, Minnie, Quinn said, as he shoved her with his body outside the front door, glad that Layla had given him this chance. The two of them were walking towards the school, which was inside the settlement on the west side. Not close to the border, as there was a worry if there was ever an attack that the children would be hurt. However, the worrying thing was, Quinn's guarding station was situated more toward the east side, as that was where the ninth family was from. As the two happily walked through, Quinn couldn't believe how much his life had changed. He didn't know how much he would enjoy just sending his little girl to school. When they got closer, Quinn could see many other vampire parents taking their kids to school as well. Currently, Minnie would be attending...
It's called My Vampire System?
It was a school that took kids aged from 5 to 13. After that, the secondary was a lot more varied. It was more based on one skill, so there were even some adults in the secondary school. At some points, there were also large breaks as they needed enough people to study due to the strange rules in the past limiting vampire numbers and children. But those rules weren't around anymore, so school worked more or less the same for humans on Earth. Minnie was considered 7 years old for her size, so there would certainly be some kids that were bigger than her, which worried Quinn, but it was the natural worry of a father. Eventually, Quinn and Minnie arrived at the entrance of the school. Here, kids of all ages were entering the building. It was quite large because at the vampire school, they not only taught normal academics, but how one would use their powers as well. Have you seen that father? He's so handsome. Do you think he's single? I haven't noticed him before. He is certainly handsome, but look at his clothes. He's just a guard. It's such a waste for a pretty face like his just to be a guard. Maybe he should be a model for some of the clothes merchants or something. Quinn could hear a lot of comments about him, but he didn't care about them and just knelt down to be at eye level along with Minnie. You remember all the rules that your mother and I set while you're at school, right? Quinn said. Minnie nodded with a big smile. I'm sorry that you can't try your best, but you have to understand that's just because Minnie is special. Your mom will be here to pick you up when school ends, okay? Daddy still has to work for a couple hours after that. Quinn rubbed her curly hair. Thank you, Daddy, Minnie said, as she gave him a kiss and started to walk to school on her own. When seeing some of the other vampires walking with their friends, and those they knew from other families, worried him. What if she was unable to make friends? What if something happened and Minnie wouldn't tell him? At this point, he wished he had the connections he did before to know what was going on in the school. He even wished he could take the day off work and watch Minnie from the shadows just to see how she got along. But he restrained himself. Minnie needed to live a normal life as well. Do you think they're really father and daughter? The two of them look nothing alike, two women said. Turning his head, Quinn looked directly at the two mothers. It was an intense stare that was intimidating for them, that caused them to look away. But when one of them looked back, they noticed that the man was gone. What was that? One of them asked. It looked like he was going to hit us. And here I thought, with such a face, he would be a gentleman. Maybe we shouldn't talk too loudly in the open next time. Standing just outside the Ninth Castle's area, Ronak was tapping his feet away as he waited for his partner to appear. He was never late, and although it wasn't time for them to start work yet, he had never seen Quinn appear this late. A gust of wind was felt on his cheek, and when he looked up, it startled Ronak as a vampire had appeared out of nowhere in front of him. Where did you come from? Ronak asked. Sorry, Quinn replied. I wanted to take my daughter to school since it's her first day and all. It was embarrassing for Quinn to say these words, but he was proud in a way. He was almost too happy about saying these words he never thought he would say. Your daughter is 7 years old, right? Doesn't that mean she's going to Roland Primary School? That's all the way on the other side of the settlement. How did you get here so fast? Ronak asked. Vampires were fast, but not that fast to get from the opening time of school to here in time. Not unless they had the speed that Quinn had, of course. We went early so I wouldn't be late, and then I ran here. I'm pretty fast, Quinn stated. Oh, I think that's the first time you have ever said you're good at something around here, Ronak smiled, as the two of them continued to walk, starting their patrol. I mean, it's a good thing if you did go early. I wouldn't want my son to see me with all the other kids, Ronak said. What do you mean? Quinn replied, confused. Did you forget? We are guards. It's one of the lowest jobs. Anyone can get this role even if they don't know how to fight. It's almost a pity job for vampires. Have you ever heard me complain about this? If the other kids see us, there's a good chance that the others will make fun of her. Kids are meaner than you think. They have no filter when they talk to people. Had the simple act of taking her to school ruined her chances to make friends? And what if the other kids teased Minnie to the point she decided to do something? If that were to happen... Anyway, I wanted to ask you a favor, Ronak said. Would you help and fight against me? In the time the two had known each other, Ronak had never asked Quinn for any type of favor. For some reason, Ronak was obsessed with getting stronger and improving himself through combat, and because of that, he never really thought about asking Quinn for anything. Because to him, Quinn was just a handsome vampire who was content being a guard. It made Quinn wonder why now, of all days, he was asking for something like this. You want me to fight with you? You mean you want to practice some technique or spar against me? Ronak nodded. I'm sorry, but isn't there someone else you can ask? I mean, you said it yourself a million times that I'm not much of a fighter. So wouldn't asking one of the scout teams or the family members be better? Quinn replied. Ronak couldn't help but scoff at the suggestion. Unless I pay them, those guys have no reason to help someone like me. Look, I'll be honest. I moved here with my family from the Greylash planets because I couldn't get a good job. I couldn't do anything useful to put food on the table, and I wasn't a good enough traveler either, so I gambled all my luck by coming here, hoping to change my life, and that's what I have been focused on. So? Well, what I'm trying to say is, besides you and the other guards, I don't really know anyone, and you're the one I spend most of my time with. Quinn still felt like this obsession with climbing to the top was wrong, but he understood that others always wish to better their lives. Maybe through a spar, Quinn could teach him a couple of moves, and it would allow him to get a promotion from being a guard, but then his secret would get out, which was something he could not afford to expose yet. We can't fight right now, Quinn replied firmly. We're on guard duty, and why do you need to get stronger anyway? Enjoy your life and enjoy every peaceful day before you. Right now, the two of them were close to one of the gates that led out of the settlement. Ronak stood there, opening up both of his hands. Look, no one needs us right now. If we were to take a whole week off, I don't think anything would change. And there is a reason I'm asking you. I'm not expecting a few sparring sessions with you to instantly make myself good enough to promote myself from this post, but there is an event tonight, Ronak explained. Once in a while, the guards from the other families have a get-together, and a tournament is organized. Basically, we fight against each other and test each other's strengths. The guards really have nothing to do, but they say that it will increase our skills as a group. And on top of that, everyone puts their money together, and the winner of the fight gets the total at the end. I know you keep telling me to live my life, but I need that money. Money? Now, Quinn was starting to understand his partner a bit more. It wasn't an obsession with power. The reason why Ronak wanted to quit being a guard was so he could have more of it. The question was, why? But Quinn had no intention of peeking into the former's personal life. After all, everyone had their reasons, and he didn't seem to be a greedy one, as there was a slight shift and downtone in his voice. All right, as you said, nothing has happened so far in this settlement, so I doubt something will happen today. Quinn somewhat relented in the end. We can have a couple of sparring matches together, and I'll teach you a move or two that you can use in this little tournament you have. Ronak was respectful as he bowed down to Quinn, even though he assumed he was the older one. Right now, he didn't care about age. The stubborn vampire was finally doing something like this. But I think you're mistaken. I don't think I'm going to learn much from you. I just need to brush up my skills here and there, Ronak replied, as he jumped onto the roof of a building, getting into a fighting stance. He didn't even consider Quinn as his opponent. Rather, he wanted to sharpen himself with his sparring and gain some confidence. It was the first day for the students at the school, and it was a strange experience for many of them because the vampire settlement didn't exist before. The whole school was new. Before, they were either being taught at home by their parents, or there were a few vampires here and there that went to mixed schools on the Greylash planets. However, many vampire children didn't have the best experience there, which was why most of the vampires with young ones, and those who were about to have kids, decided to come to the settlement, a school where they would have no worries about their children. At the time, as Minnie lined up in a row with her new classmates and her teacher standing at the front of the large hall, she noticed that the other kids had been playing and talking to each other. It seemed like they were all familiar with each other and had been friends for a long time. On the other hand, she had been spending time at home, helping her pregnant mother with things around the house and trying to spend as much time as possible with her father. Seeing this, she couldn't help but feel left out and was already missing her parents as well. No, my parents worry enough about me. I have to stay strong. I can't tell them that I miss them already, Minnie thought, as she wiped her face a few times. She repeated the rules in her head. Never was Minnie to transform into her celestial self. She was able to use 10% of her strength in the school tests and assessments, so things didn't look suspicious, and she was never to use her shadow powers. However, to all of these conditions, Quinn stated that unless she felt her or another's life was on the line, she took care of how she had used her powers. Still, it was made clear that if any of these things did happen, their regular life would crumble. While sitting in her room rubbing her belly, Layla had a thought. I know this life can't be kept up forever. To be honest, I'm surprised Quinn has kept it up for this long. I think he's on his best behavior because of you. Still, it makes me wonder, which one of the two will be the first? In the assembly hall, the introductions by the staff were eventually over, and the principal gave a speech welcoming all of the students and wishing them good luck with the school. With that, the classmates moved along as they headed to their new classroom. The classroom had around 20 students in total. They all looked around the same age as Minnie, and there was one desk per student in the classroom. It was loaded with technology as the desk itself was a giant tablet that the students could use to write notes and project videos for them to watch that were related to the lesson. The leader had given the school the best upgrades, and with a nice flow of beast crystals, it was easy for them to power everything with them. As the students stepped into the class, they could see their names hovering above the individual desks, and each student could see where their designated seats were. Ah, we are right next to each other. This is great, Tot. Yeah, we're not only in the same class, but are next to each other as well. Most of the students were already chatting to those next to them excitedly, apart from Minnie, who was seated in the center of the room, in the middle row, neither talking to the one in front, behind, to the left nor right. Okay, everyone, sit in your seat and quiet down, the female teacher said. The teacher had long black hair tied up in a ponytail down to her waist. This person was someone Minnie hadn't seen around before, but she had a friendly smile that made her feel a bit more comfortable. As the class calmed down, the female teacher began to introduce herself. Before we go through the serious stuff and class rules, I thought it would be nice if everyone introduced themselves and stated their name and something they like doing, a hobby of some sort. She turned around and wrote her name on the board. My name is Miss Bedford, and I like to play the piano in my spare time. After that, the rest of the kids clapped as she smiled and gestured towards the next student. One by one, the children stood up from their seats as they said their names and talked about their hobbies, such as playing games, fighting, and other things like cooking. And it was finally Minnie's turn. My name is Minnie Talon, and I like spending time with my dad and mom, she answered. The teacher thought it was a sweet answer, but the other kids started to giggle when they heard this, which caused Minnie to go slightly red and sit down straight away. No laughing, you guys. Family is an essential part of our lives and plays a crucial role in developing our character. Your mom and dad are why you are even here today, so you should treasure them, Miss Bedford said. Minnie was happy that the teacher stuck up for her, and she thought the next student would quickly say their name, so everyone would forget about what she had said, until a boy from before spoke up, one named Toby. Isn't your dad a guard? Toby's words were loud and directed at Minnie. I saw him this morning, and my parents were talking about it as well. Man, if I had a father as weak as yours, I would be embarrassed even to say I have a father. My dad is strong, Minnie shouted immediately in response, banging the table. The group of children next to Toby started to laugh. Come on, I know you're like us, but how can you be that stupid? Your dad is weak, and that's why he's a guard. Everyone knows that if you want respect, you have to be strong. Toby, stop it now, the teacher instructed him to stop, afraid things might go out of hand. Come on, miss, it's true. Even to be a teacher, a vampire must have a certain level of strength, and everyone knows a guard is just a job that anyone can have. Miss Bedford narrowed her eyes and stared straight at Toby. For not listening to me and being disobedient, someone will have to clean the classroom after school. Toby immediately stopped. He hated cleaning, and it was something his parents didn't even make him do. So he just hissed his teeth and looked at Minnie, who was staring him down with daggers in her eyes. Okay, class, let's continue with the introductions, Miss Bedford said. The lessons continued as normal, and Minnie followed along with the teacher as they studied math, English, and so on. The physical lessons were only on certain days and mainly in the afternoon. For the first day, there won't be any, though. After the first two lessons, it was time for them to have a break, and one of the other girls came up to Minnie. She had braided hair and was holding a book in her chest. You're Abby, right? Minnie asked when she noticed the young girl. Yeah, hello. I was wondering if you wanted to spend a break together, Abby asked. You see, I don't know anyone, and I don't like to drink my juice alone. Just like Minnie, Abby knew no one, and Minnie was happy to see that she wasn't alone in all of this, and with that, the two of them felt like they had a connection with each other. Really? I have lots of juice boxes. We can drink lots of juice together, Minnie said. The two headed out together, holding hands to enjoy their break. Toby had a few other boys around him as they were packing some of their things away. Do you guys see the way she stared at me? Toby asked his friends. Yeah, I think she wanted to rip your throat out, another boy replied. Yeah, staring at me, the strongest in our grade. She did look at me like she was ready to fight. I guess we should see for ourselves if she was actually ready or just faking it. Toby smiled as he got up, ready to follow Minnie. Boo! Ready for a frightfully good... On the rooftop of one of the houses in the settlement, one of the vampires was panting and trying to catch his breath, while the other didn't seem tired at all. His breathing was steady, and there wasn't a single strand of sweat on his body. The situation seemed quite ridiculous, especially to the man standing before him. What is going on? Ronak shouted as he pointed at Quinn, who was standing there with his hands behind his back. I can't even touch you. This sparring match was supposed to give me some confidence, and now I feel like absolute crap. Have I lost all my ability to fight or something? Quinn gave out a big sigh as he walked over. You said you wanted me to help you, right? You want to win this tournament to get money, right? Quinn asked. So, I shouldn't just let you hit me. Do you think your opponent is just going to stand there or wait for you to attack? Although this was right, what was annoying Ronak more was despite him giving his 100%, he hadn't managed to hit Quinn even once. Although it was the same for the latter, he felt it was because Quinn was pulling back and not hitting him on purpose. The two of us have both been assessed as guards, so that means the judges thought that we were at the same level. Do I really just suck so much? Ronak thought, while stomping his feet on the roof out of frustration. Calm down, or we will have to pay for the repairs to the house. Quinn shook his head at the former's antics. You're trying to earn money, not to lose it. Look, let me give you some advice. During our fight just then, not once did I use any vampire aura. I simply looked at the movement of your arms and could see where you were planning to strike. You're too obsessed with making your blood aura and your strikes more powerful and your moves faster. Your power itself is not weak, but the way you utilize its potential is where you lose. It's these skills, and let me remind you, using your vampire aura is not the only way to fight. Attack me again, and this time don't use any aura at all, Quinn suggested. Upon considering what Quinn had just said, Ronak realized the former was right. He noticed that he was moving before he even released a blood slash. It didn't look like Quinn was moving fast either, at least not any faster than Ronak could move. Quinn had done and said all of this on purpose, of course, because he thought the best way to teach the fellow vampire guard was to use power equivalent to him. After seeing Ronak's aura and skills, Quinn had a good grasp of the latter's strength. So he limited himself to move, to have the same strength and aura as the other, and use just his skill and experience in fighting. In a sense, the Quinn Ronak was fighting right now was Ronak's best version of himself. Running forward, Ronak did as Quinn said, and instead of using his aura, he simply threw a punch straight at Quinn's face. But it was blocked with the palm moving it to punch the side. Then when he threw out a flurry of punches, each one of Ronak's hits was moved to the side, and it felt like he was hitting nothing but air, because that was exactly what he was doing. You need to focus, Quinn said, as he went to throw a punch back. But just before it hit Ronak's head, he pulled back. The force was pushing Ronak, and out of fear, Ronak lifted his hands to protect himself from the hit. Then, shifting forward with his legs, Quinn pushed him back bit by bit. You said you were bored, right? You said you wanted to fight out there with the others? Quinn shouted as he continued to shift forward, slightly knocking the arms and legs of Ronak, stopping any attempt that Ronak had of defending himself. Out there, you fight with your life on the line. Every movement you make should count because any of them could be your last, Quinn said, as he went for a thigh kick, but stopped just short. However, the power in the kick caused a little force in the wind to hit Ronak on his thigh, and he fell on the floor immediately in pain. Ah, shit, Ronak groaned as he found himself on the ground. I understand what you're saying. I was an idiot to think all of those things. Pushing himself off the ground, Ronak got off the ground and got back into a fighting stance, his eyes wide open, ready to observe everything Quinn was doing. I can tell Ronak is a vampire that has never fought before, not against a beast or had the danger of having his life on the line. His power isn't bad, but if there is one thing, he has determination. It looks like this person has a reason to fight, and if that is the case, then this is definitely one I can teach, Quinn smiled. I wonder, Arthur, is this what you felt like when you were teaching me? We never really got to talk about those feelings, did we? Because of this, Quinn decided to say something before they went for the next round. Ronak, you have determination. With that, as long as you have a good teacher, you can get to where you want to be. Quinn spoke his mind. For a second, Ronak let down his guard. Never in his wildest dreams did he think a compliment from a fellow guard would make him so happy, and it was at that moment he realized that he didn't view Quinn as a fellow guard after this. Quinn, I want to say I'm sorry for everything I said before, Ronak said. I thought you were weak because you never wanted to fight. You never wanted to get involved in any action. But you know, us vampires, because of our strength, there is this innate desire to prove ourselves with our power. And it's the same for me, but I have another reason why I'm trying so hard. But because of that, because it didn't feel like you had that desire, I thought that you were a vampire that had given up on any goals like that. Quinn stayed silent. Had he given up? Did it really feel that way? Maybe, because there were some days when he felt like that, but it was the opposite. Quinn had never given up for a second, and he just had another reason not to be rash like he did in the past, a family. But not for a second had Quinn given up. That's it. At the end of these training sessions, I have to hit you at least once, Ronak declared, a giant grin on his face. If you were able to do that, then you would be even stronger than the family leaders, Quinn chuckled. Ronak couldn't help but laugh upon hearing this. Ha ha, look who has a big head now. You get one compliment and you think you're the strongest vampire here. Quinn grinned, not saying anything else, as the two continued their training. As time went on, in the end, Roanoke was unable to get a single hit on Quinn, but through Quinn's direction, he improved at quite a fast rate. He paid attention, there was more focus, and with determination to try to hit Quinn, he was even using everything he had, and naturally, there was hardly any time wasted in his movements. He still had a long way to work, and wasn't a genius by any means like Minnie, but still, he would grow to be a decent fighter. Lying there on the floor, Roanoke looked at Quinn, and was still disappointed, but even he could tell his fighting was getting better. I hate to ask this of you, Roanoke asked, even though you are already doing me a favor. That tournament, it's about to start in the next hour. You see, the guards do it during their duty time. As you know, there is nothing for us to do anyway, and it's not like anyone notices if we're gone. The tournament is meant to be in the next hour or so. I'll recover fully by then, but I was wondering if you could come with me to watch? Heck, with your skills, you could even take part and win if you want. Anyway, I want you to review my fighting. If I don't win this time, I can win when the next gathering comes around. Initially, Quinn was going to decline. There was certainly no reason for him to take part. These were just regular vampires, not even that of the noble level. It was unfair for him to fight, and the only thing it offered wasn't needed either. Although a guard's salary was small, Quinn had sold one of the high-tier items he had stacked away in his shadow for some money that would do them well for anything they needed. However, certain words rang in his head. Layla told him he should hang out with others more to make new friends. Make new friends. Why am I so worried about those words? Is it because it means a bigger list of people to protect? More heartache for the future? Quinn wondered. Minnie was still at school, and technically he would still be on duty until he got home. So doing Roanoke a favor wouldn't be so much of a bad thing. All right, I'll come, but don't count on me fighting, Quinn stated. A school full of vampires was bound to be different from a school for regular children. For one, there was a big focus on making the vampires understand how to utilize their strength. The vampire settlement never wanted the kids to shy away from doing so, which was why the playground wasn't a simple place either. There were advanced climbing frames that were built high up in the air. Monkey bars had a great distance between each bar. At the same time, there were even fake dolls that were on poles for the students to practice hitting and targeting precision. The dolls were quite resilient, and also had a strange self-healing mechanism, so if they were scratched or attacked with vampire aura, they would survive and eventually return back to normal. Right now, it was a simple break rather than lunch, so the kids weren't being served a meal, but they were free to eat any snacks they had brought from them. Minnie and her new friend Abby were both sitting on what looked like a large log. It was sturdy and could fit around 50 students on it based on how large it was. They were sitting on the end, away from the other kids, watching all the others as they drank their juice boxes. Unlike Abby, who was drinking her juice slowly, bit by bit, Minnie was already down to the bottom as the straw was making a slurping noise. Ah, Minnie exclaimed with a big smile. You must have been really hungry. You can have some of mine if you want, Abby smiled, as she offered her juice box. Straight away, Minnie's eyes were sparkling. She knew that Abby would be a kind-hearted soul the second she had met her. For a kid to offer their juice to another was not easy. It's okay. Minnie, however, shook her head and looked away from the juice box, but taking a peek now and then, she continued. My dad, he limits how many of these I can have. Oh, I see. That's the dad you said you like being with, right? Abby asked, as she continued to sip her juice slowly. Yeah, I miss my parents, because I don't know anyone at the school, but now I have met you. I think maybe we can enjoy school together. Minnie let out a sweet laugh at the end. The two of them got to talking, and apparently, Abby didn't know anyone because her family had only just decided to move to the settlement. It was a sudden decision, but Abby didn't mind too much because she didn't know any vampires her age anyway. Just like Minnie, it was hard for her to approach a group of kids that were already friends and knew each other, but she had promised that if she met others her age, she would try to make friends, and that was why she had approached Minnie in the first place. I see, Minnie said. It's the same for me. I don't know anyone my age either. Anyway, now that we have drunk our juice, is there anything you want to play with? The two of them looked around. The playground was mixed with kids of all sorts of ages, so there were some bigger vampires using a lot of the equipment, and Abby also noticed that Minnie's eyes were more focused on the combat equipment. She was watching a group of boys who were showing each other a set of moves, punching the doll and making it rock back and forth. A bunch of kids had even gathered around one that was using his vampire aura to surround his arm. Are you interested in fighting? Abby asked. Minnie turned around at quite a speed and scratched the back of her head. Not really. It's just sometimes I've had to fight here and there, so I have seen quite a few things. I heard the school plans to have a monthly assessment, Abby explained. All the kids are to show what they have learned, and the leaders of the family will visit us. If the leaders think you are strong enough or have potential, they will take you under their wing and train you. Gone were the days when families cared about their own blood. Now they just cared about raising talented vampires to be loyal to their families. It's okay, Minnie replied. I already have a really good teacher if I need to learn to fight. You have a teacher? Who's that? Abby asked. My dad, of course. Minnie pointed to herself. My dad is stronger and a better teacher than any of those leaders. Ha ha ha. The gag of loud laughter suddenly came from behind them, and as they turned around, they could see that it was Toby, the boy who had made the comments earlier about Minnie's father and a few of his friends. There looked to be two other boys and two other vampire girls that were walking around with him. For some reason, Toby looked to be a popular boy. It looks like we really met a delusional one, right, guys? Toby asked, and the others couldn't stop laughing. Did you really say that your father, the one that is a guard, is a better teacher and stronger than the leaders? If the leaders heard that, they might chop off not just your head, but also your father's as well. Then we would really see who is stronger and who isn't. Minnie was angry at first, because of course Toby was making fun of her, but then an image appeared in her head. Suppose the leaders did attempt that. She could just imagine her father doing the exact opposite to them, and then a smile appeared on her face. Hey, what do you think is so funny? Toby asked. Do you like the thought of your family dying? Are you some type of sick freak? Hearing these words, it had a set of images in Minnie's head. Because she had a family that had died, her mother, her real mother that she never was able to see again, was dead. And now, she had a new family thanks to Quinn, who was looking after her. Who was this person, and who were they to say such mean things to her? Minnie clenched both of her fists behind her, and Abby could hear a slight cracking noise. When she looked at the large wooden log they were on, Minnie's nails were ripping it to shreds. I haven't said anything about your family, so why? Why do you keep saying stuff about mine? Minnie said, as she got off the log and looked up at Toby. She was staring him in the eye, and her eyes were starting to glow slightly red, which usually meant a vampire aura was starting to burn from within. You're looking at me with those eyes, Toby shouted back. At this point, the shouting match between the two was catching the attention of the others, in the higher grades and the lower grades. Fights happened on the playground all the time, and kids were always excited to see the outcome and what would come of them. You really want to hit me, don't you? Go on then, show me what your useless father has taught you, Toby shouted, trying to look strong upon seeing everyone's attention on him, while also feeling somewhat confident about taking on Minnie. An enormous rage was burning inside of Minnie, one that was almost impossible to contain. She knew that she could finish off this vampire in front of her with a single hit. There was no need for her to even transform, but the words of her mother were going through her mind. Minnie, I know Quinn said for you to use only 10% of your strength, but I think that's because he is comparing your strength to his own, Layla said, as she was helping Minnie get ready for school, making sure her uniform was on properly. At your school, I doubt there is a vampire that would even be stronger than you, even at your 10%. So instead, I have a special request. Try your best not to get into any fights, and when you are really angry, just think about how happy you will be when you finally come home. That distinct memory, and not wanting to upset her mother, had caused Minnie to take a deep breath, and the red glow from her eyes had disappeared. Phew, Abby thought, breathing out as well. She was nervous for Minnie because of who had approached her. If there was a vampire like Toby that had people surrounding him, it meant one of two things. His family was in high positions, and he himself was a strong vampire for his age. Even at this age, the vampires were taught by their parents to get close to those that were strong, and it would help them out in the future. I'm happy that Minnie managed to calm herself down. I understand why she's angry, but getting into a fight with these guys would just bring more trouble to her family, and from the sounds of it, Minnie loves her family. What's this? Toby said. I was giving you a free hit, and what? You still won't touch me. Toby looked away for a second and smiled. If I let little brats like you badmouth the leaders and look down on me, that's what starts rebellions. So I should teach them a lesson before things get out of hand. Turning his head, immediately using all his speed, Toby went to grab Minnie's hair, but as he clenched his fist, he grabbed nothing but air. Minnie had bent down, and his move had completely missed. Did she expect me to do that? Toby thought. Come on, Toby. You said you would teach her a lesson. She just made you look like a fool, one of the friends shouted. Toby chuckled a bit. Don't worry, I'll get her. Toby moved his hand, attempting to grab her again, but Minnie had moved out of the way once more, now to the side, his arm contumely trying to catch her, but she kept moving out of the way. Frustrated, Toby started to use both hands, attempting to grab Minnie, but each time she avoided the hits. The idle kids were watching, and the others were quite impressed. Minnie's movements were small, and Toby wasn't slow by any means, yet he was unable to catch her. I'm keeping both promises this way, right, Mommy? Minnie isn't fighting, and I'm only using 10% of my power to avoid his hits, Minnie thought, as she was quite proud of herself. For Minnie, one of the most important aspects of her genius self had always been her speed, and she was untouchable to Toby, who soon turned his grabs into punches, but was still hitting nothing but air. Over by the door section, there was a group of older boys. One of them, a pretty short-haired boy, couldn't help but be mesmerized by what he was seeing. He was one of the vampires that were using a vampire aura surrounding his arm as a group gathered around him. Are you seeing this, Jared? Yeah, she's fast. Really fast. I think maybe as fast as me, Jared replied. It looks like a talented student has arrived in this place after all. Eventually, Toby slowed down. He was running out of energy just trying to catch her, and the friends he had arrived with had decided to take a step away. There were some giggles from other students, and even they thought it was embarrassing after his confidence and bragging, which was why they didn't want to be seen with Toby right now. Ah, you bitch, Toby shouted, as he launched with a boost from his legs and went for a grab, but Minnie had moved away again, only this time there was a scream shortly after. Ah! Minnie turned to look, and her heart started to beat wildly as she saw what was taking place. You don't look so confident now. All you can do is run about, and my guess is you can't really fight right. You're just fast and weak. So maybe if I hold your friend here, you'll stop running away, Toby claimed as he held Abby up by her pigtails. Let her go, Minnie shouted. Come at me then, Toby shouted back. He pulled down her hair tightly, which caused pain and tears to fall down. Abby could feel a tinge of pain on her scalp as Toby was pulling quite hard. If you won't come to me, then I'll just have to hit your friend, Toby said, as he made a fist and punched her right in the stomach. All the air was knocked out of Abby, and spit came out of her mouth. Her eyes felt like they were trying to bulge out of her head. Abby was trying to cry. She was so scared, but she was unable to, due to the pain and shock. Minnie was shaking her head, holding her fists so hard that blood was dripping from her hands. Why? Abby is now hurt just because she wanted to become my friend. Why is there someone so mean in the world like this? Minnie thought. What did us two do? We were just talking to each other. All I want to do is keep my promise to Daddy and Mommy. Minnie wants to be a good girl. Since Minnie was doing nothing, Toby felt like he was on the mark. This little vampire wasn't much of a vampire, and he lifted his fist again and punched Abby right in the stomach. She screamed in pain, and in doing so, Toby pulled her head back by her hair, heaving it in the air. At this moment, Hebe, who was with Jared and the other older students, went to step forward. That damn kid, he's so cruel he needs a beating or two, Hebe said as she stepped forward, but Jared put out his hand. I don't think you have to worry. That little vampire isn't just going to stand there, Jared stated. Minnie slowly started to walk towards her friend and Toby, stopping just short of arm's distance. Abby, I'm sorry. You got hurt because of me. I want to help you. So please, just say yes to what I'm about to ask you. Abby could hear the words from Minnie. She was frightened for her life at the moment and didn't want to be hit anymore, but still for some reason she was clinging to the words of Minnie. Do you feel like your life is in danger right now? Minnie asked. Listening to Minnie's words from before, she was shocked for a moment, but immediately gave an answer the next moment. Yes! Her scream resounded through the hall.
Boo! Ready for a frightfully good time? Pocket FM's.
Mm-hmm.
Just as Ronak had
I won't.
reported the fact that the guards were missing, at least the patrolling guards. There were permanent vampires that were always stationed at the gates and entrance to the family areas. These were higher positions and were given to those quite skillful. If Quinn were to compare it to the Earth of the past, they would be like patrolling policemen, with no crimes to stop the only disputes to solve. While in the present situation, guards were more like the military of the vampires that the civilians respected. This also meant that the two could walk wherever they wished, without being questioned because no one would bother them. As Quinn followed Ronak, he noticed that they were no longer close to the central market of the square of the pooling area for vampires. They had gone to the west side behind some houses and were in a sort of play arena. There was a large energy cage. Using the power of the crystal, barriers would be put up and allow the children who lived in the area to play sports. The barriers themselves were, of course, powered by the beast crystals. Only this time, it looked like it was being used by the other guards as well. Every one of them was standing next to a console that could change the energy barrier to whatever they wished. The guards all had similar clothing styles. The only difference was a slight variation in color. A slight black here or there, or maybe the shoulder pads were slightly different, being a little spiked. Since there were only 9 families, the vampires quickly knew which guards belonged to which area. However, when it came to solving disputes, which family did so, even if the problem was related to other families, didn't really matter, which was how all the guards, or lowly guards as they called themselves, came together. You wanted to make friends, but I'm not sure you would be happy if I told you what I was doing right now, Quinn thought. Hey everyone, did we make it in time? Ronak said as he waved to the others. They turned around and all had friendly smiles on their faces. There looked to be 2 guards from each family, which meant including the 2 of them, there were 18 of them in total. Even if all put in a small amount of money, the winner of this thing would make quite a bit. Looks like you brought someone with you this time. A man walked over towards them with large biceps and a sleeveless shirt. His shoulder pads and armor were dark, almost black-green. It was hard to tell with the sky always being dark, but this indicated that he was from the 13th family, the same family that Fex was part of before creating the vampire core. The man and Ronak had a friendly handshake with each other, after which the 2 of them walked over to Quinn. This is my partner from the 9th family. The 2 of us patrol around all the time. Usually, he always says no to these types of things, so I didn't bother inviting him before because of it. But this time he decided to come along, Ronak explained. The man, with a big smile on his face, put his hand forward. Now close to each other, Quinn noticed that he had a bit of a square head, which reminded him of a certain someone, a good friend he had in the past. My name is Nell. The man had a cherry deep voice, and the smile looked to never go away, making his eyes quite small. It's always good to have a fellow guard come to one of these events. The more the merrier. Besides, it makes the pot bigger as well. The man started to laugh, but that's when Ronak started to look a bit nervous. Actually, Nell, Quinn isn't taking part. He's just here to watch. It's okay, Quinn said, and thanks for letting me watch. I'm happy to put in the same amount of money as you guys. I just won't be taking part. Quinn couldn't believe it, but it looked like the smile on Nell's face had gotten even bigger, and the next second, he wrapped his hand around Quinn's neck, bringing him close. I like people like you. You know how to show respect without ever needing to. For a young one, you certainly have manners. Come on, let me introduce you to the rest and explain the rules, Nell said. If only Nell knew, Quinn was much older than all of them here. Still, that was only in terms of numbers and not mentally, of course, which was why those sorts of things never bothered him. Nearly all the guards seemed friendly and around the same age as Nell and Ronak. They were family men. Nearly all of them were fathers trying to look after their families. After the introductions were over, Nell went on to explain the rules. It was a simple knockout tournament that was set up in the machine. After he put everyone's names in, the machine would come up with 2 names. Those 2 contestants would fight, and the loser would be knocked out. After that, the winner had time to recover, and as it got closer to the finale, the winners of the fights were also able to drink a bit of blood to replenish themselves and heal up before they were to go into the next battle. Alright, so everyone who is spectating for the match must watch from behind the barrier. Also, try not to attack the barrier too much on purpose, alright? Nell explained. Last time it broke, we all had to pay out of our own pockets to have it fixed. He then pressed the little console to the side, and the machine randomly jumped through all of the names. It was at a crazy speed that one could not keep up with it, apart from Quinn. Was my name still inputted into the system? I guess that makes sense. If someone gets teamed up with me, they will get a free win. Since the numbers are even that way, they are just lucky. Surprisingly, the first 2 names that appeared were Ronak and a man named Button. Well, I didn't think I would be up this fast, but here we go, I guess. Quinn, could you keep an eye on me and give me pointers on where I go wrong? Ronak asked. As the 2 participants walked forward, some of the other guards cheered for Ronak and others for his opponent Button. It seems that Ronak believes you are quite a skilled fighter, Nell said, with his arms folded. It's a shame that we won't see you participate in this fight. Quinn didn't say anything as the barrier was lifted in a circle shape, giving a ring for the two to fight in, and the match started. As soon as it had done, Button charged in, and in the past, Ronak would have done the same, but this time, he stayed still. He could see the aura gathering on the other hand as he unleashed a blood slash. Ronak moved to the side and gathered his own aura, throwing out an attack of his own. Button moved out of the way, but when he did, Ronak had already grabbed him by his shoulder and pulled him forward, kneeing him right in the stomach. Oh, what's this? Usually Ronak would charge in headfirst against his opponent. In fact, nearly all of these guys just try to clash their aura together. I'm happy to see that he's finally trying something different. Could this be your influence? Nell asked. Although it was the influence of Quinn, he was surprised by how well Ronak had taken his advice and training. They had only been training for a few hours for something which one usually needs more time to absorb and see any improvements. In a panicked situation, they would just revert back to what they usually did, but Ronak was calm as he usually was. Button wasn't quick to give up there, though, as he kicked Ronak's leg, which was slightly off balance, causing his body to topple, and for him to fall to the ground. Soon after, a fistful of red aura came down right towards Ronak's face, but was caught with both hands before hitting him. The two were now in a fierce battle of strength, as they pushed at each other. There is Ronak's determination. That's why, even though he isn't the most skilled, he always at least made it midway in these little skirmishes we have, Nell commented. That guy really does care about his family. Family? Quinn repeated. Oh, I thought with the two of you working together all the time that you would have known. There is a reason why Ronak always tries to win these fights. He needs the money to help out his family, Nell explained. Nell didn't say anything else after that. It wasn't his place to, because it wasn't his information either, but it struck a chord with Quinn. Because he had told a certain leader his reason for doing what he was doing was the same. It was because of his family. We have a winner! I did it, Quinn! Look at that! Ronak smiled, his face somewhat swollen from being hit, and he had a large cut on his hand. You still got hit way too much, Quinn replied with a smile. The small sparring event continued as matches happened one after the other, and Quinn observed them. Based on his observations, Quinn could see why they had all been chosen as guards if he seriously evaluated them. They all looked to have next to no real fighting experience. They knew how to use the basic skills, but none of them had a vampire aura that seemed powerful enough to give them an upper hand against the others. In the evaluation, the families would likely pick someone with experience or enough talent to make it worthwhile, and these guys had neither. In fact, it was evident that they needed a guide or a teacher to clear even some of the basic things. However, barring that, a few of the people had somewhat caught his eye. One of them was Nell, the one who had organized this tournament. Just like the others, he didn't have a particularly great vampire aura, but what he did have were some fighting skills. He knew how to use his hands and turned out to be quite a good grappler. If the others would get close and throw a few missed punches here or there, or even take a hit or two, the match was over because he would lock them up in specific ways, so they were unable to use their fists or legs, then push and pull at certain joints until one heard them pop. Luckily, a vampire could quickly heal from these wounds with a bit of blood, so injuries of this level were common in the matches. You know, now that I think about it, I think Nell has won most of these tournaments, and he was the one that had come up with the idea in the first place, Ronak commented, standing next to Quinn watching the match. Is he scamming us? Quinn couldn't help but laugh. I'm sure that's not the case. The amount of money is small, but when put together is quite large. On top of that, any of you could have stopped coming to these matches after seeing his skills. If it were a scam after winning the first tournament, he would have stopped and not invited you guys. Quinn looked at Ronak, who had his eyes glued to the match, and eventually he said something. Is there a way I can beat him? I am sure you must have a way, so if I may, I want to ask, what would you do if you were in there? Ronak was talking so loud that the others watching could hear. They found it weird that he was putting so much hope into the newcomer, who was also a guard like them. Quinn looked around at the eyes of others, and he could tell that he was catching attention, which was something he didn't want to do, so he decided to keep quiet. If I told you, that wouldn't be fair on the others, so all I can say is, do your best. Ronak felt a little down at hearing that answer, and the sadness soon turned into frustration as he clenched his fist. Quinn, I have to start winning these fights. I told you before, I have to get better, and I have to improve my rank in the next evaluation. I need the money for my family. I didn't tell you this before because there was no point in you knowing, but now I feel like you can help me. My son, he's sick. It's a disease that is rare for vampires. In the first place, vampires don't even usually get sick, and because of this disease, he's bedridden and can't even go to school like the other kids. So I need a vampire to look over him, or go to someone with a strong ability to cure him, but to do that, I need the money. So please, if you know, help me win this tournament. Now, Quinn understood why Ronak fought so hard. It wasn't a selfish reason like most. If he was put in the same situation, Quinn would have done the same. The thing was, with Ronak's skills right now, without more training, Quinn didn't really have an answer for him to win this tournament. Maybe the next one in a week's time, but with this one, he would just have to go as far as he could. If you get to the point where you match up with him, then I'll tell you, Quinn said. A smile grew on Ronak's face. Winning the next match would mean he would soon catch up with Nell, and maybe they would even meet in the finals. But he would only have to win one more match to get into the final four. But there was a chance he could be the lucky one since there were 8 left in the tournament. Unfortunately, it looked like Ronak wasn't so lucky, and he was to fight once again. When entering the fighting area, Quinn was a little concerned because the opponent he was going up against was one of the other 2 that he had had his eye on, one of the other decent fighters. It wasn't because of skill though, like Nell, nor was it to do with vampire aura. Instead, it was because his speed, strength, and reflexes were all a notch above the others. Unless Ronak is at the top of his game, he won't be able to win this one, Quinn thought. The 2 were standing opposite each other. From the cheers from the side, Quinn learned that Ronak's opponent's name was Dice. Once they were ready, everyone heard a beeping sound, indicating it was time for the 2 to fight, and almost the same scene had played out. Dice had charged in, throwing out a blood swipe. Looking at Dice's arm carefully, Ronak moved to the side, dodging it, throwing out a slash of his own while running in for the attack. Dice had moved out of the way, and Ronak's hand was about to grab him when he stopped it. Nice try, but this is as far as you get, Dice said, as he used his strength to bend the fingers of Ronak, snapping them, then kicking him right in the stomach. Bearing through the pain, Ronak wasn't going to let being unable to breathe slow him down, and he swung both hands, throwing out 2 lines of aura. It was unexpected, and both of them had slashed right across Dice's chest. A light mark was made, but it wasn't deep enough. Seeing this, Dice charged in again, and when he did, he suddenly disappeared from Ronak's view and grabbed him right behind the head. That hurt, Dice said as he slammed Ronak's face right into the ground. He then lifted him and ran right into the end barrier, smashing his face into the energy barrier. Stop, Nell shouted. There is a clear winner, even if Ronak is still concussed and can't say it himself. This is a friendly fight, and there is no need to go to the death. Once he let down the energy barrier, and with a weak walk, Ronak made his way to where Quinn was. He had just made it before collapsing, but Quinn had caught him midair before he did. I'm such an idiot, Ronak said. I really thought I could win this time. I didn't even think about the others in this tournament, and only thought about Nell when I wasn't ready to reach him yet. I am so embarrassed. Watching the fight go on, there was something strange, Quinn thought. He wasn't good at comforting others, so he didn't say much to Ronak, but he was also an adult, so it was best for him to let his emotions out for the time being. Instead, he was still thinking about the fight, and was looking toward Dice. He still had been hurt from the wound Ronak inflicted in a desperate moment. Inspect. It's as I thought. He was drinking Dalki blood in a place like this, where the guards are just trying to have a bit of fun. Well, I guess I should give him a taste of his own medicine? Now, is it okay if I change my mind slightly? Would it be okay to join the tournament? Quinn asked. Nell had a large smile on his face. Usually, he would have said no, but he was interested in Quinn. Sure, go on ahead. The next match had mainly been changed, so Quinn would go up against the other guards, and since Ronak had talked to him so much, they were pretty interested to see what he could do. The beeper sounded for the match to begin, and it started with the other vampire rushing in. Quinn did the same since most of the other vampires did this. When a blood slash was sent out, off by less than a second, Quinn threw his own blood slash so they would clash against each other. It was almost like they were looking in a mirror. It seemed like an accident until it happened again, and when they were finally close to each other, Quinn parried away the hit and hit the vampire right in the face, flinging his head back. The vampire took the blow well, though, and threw out another punch, which Quinn blocked as well, and there was another solid blow to the face. Ronak, watching this, knew all of this well because at some point he had been on the receiving end, and eventually the vampire's head was hit back, and he was knocked out, no longer in the state to get back up. It was a strange sight for all of them to see. Nothing overly impressive happened. There was no big blow or one person overpowering the other, just a display of skill and nothing else. As the match ended, Quinn looked over to Dice. He wanted to teach the latter a lesson in this match, and he was sure, with the Dalkey blood powering him, that Dice wouldn't fall so early, allowing him to get a few more hits in as well. That was until Quinn felt a slight vibration on his wrist. Pressing a small button on his watch, he was patched through. It turned out someone was trying to call him. "Is this Quinn Talon I'm talking to?" the voice asked. "Yes, speaking. I'm calling from Roland Primary School. Unfortunately, there has been an incident involving your daughter, Minnie."
Boo! Ready for a frightfully good... deals are brewing just for you. Grab a...
The playground, which was usually filled with the noise of kids talking and chatting away and doing their own thing, had gone somewhat silent, as they were all focusing on the commotion that was on hand. They didn't try to make it too obvious by crowding around the scene, but all heads were turned in a certain direction. They had seen what a certain male boy had done, and in their minds, even they had thought he had gone too far. However, their reason for joining was that they were just children. What were they meant to do? If they got involved, they would get hurt as well, and they would be punished. In fact, many of their parents beforehand told their children to be careful about being involved with others. Unlike in the past, there was no longer a different school for talented students. Everyone was in one place, which meant one didn't know who they were to go up against. At the end of the day, a lot of them thought there was nothing to worry about. Vampires were very resilient compared to humans. They could take a fair bit of extra punishment and still come out alive. They could also live a long life that humans could only dream of. There was, though, something that vampires felt on an equal level to that of humans, and that was pain. The pain that Abby was going through was real. She was unable to breathe. Her innards felt like they had been partly ruptured from the hit, and the hair was being pulled out from her scalp, some of it slightly bleeding. All she wanted was for the pain to stop. She just wanted it all to stop hurting, which was why she had easily listened to Minnie's words a few moments ago. "Yes!" she screamed. After hearing those words, Minnie started to walk over to where Toby was. She didn't run, she wasn't sprinting, but was carefully taking one step at a time. Her head face down toward the ground. Seeing how this worked, Toby had a smile on her face. "Haha, what an idiot. If she tries to hit me, then I'll just pull her friend in front of me. Then when she's startled, she can get the beating of a lifetime," Toby thought. The thing was, Minnie was already in striking distance, yet she still hadn't thrown a hit out yet. Toby was watching her carefully, but she had yet to move. What is she doing? Does she think, I can't hit her even this close? Toby swung out a punch with all his strength and hit her right across the face. It was a solid hit. He could feel it, and her whole face swung to the side. However, Minnie just stood there in place, her body hadn't moved, and eventually she spat out a bit of blood from her mouth onto the floor. Lifting her head up, her eyes were glowing red, and a deep frown could be seen on her face, as her eyebrows were furrowed. Seeing this, Toby nearly took a step back, due to the intense heat. He had tried to until he heard a cracking noise. His legs suddenly collapsed, and he fell to his knees, or more correctly, he had fallen on his legs. What happened? Why am I suddenly at eye level with her? There was no pain, so Toby didn't even realize it, but when he looked down, both of his legs, they were twisted in a strange direction. One bent toward Minnie, the other one out to the other side, and part of the bone could be seen sticking out from it. "Ah! Ah! Ah!" Toby couldn't think straight as he screamed, trying to find words. There was no pain. He couldn't feel anything in his legs, but the horrendous sight in front of him was clear. Those that had been watching from the side could clearly see what had happened. Minnie had kicked one leg and then the other straight away. It was a quick, fast, and powerful blow that had broken both of Toby's legs in an instant. It was a speed that most of the children vampires had only seen adults use. Minnie's eyes were still glowing. Her anger hadn't been satisfied. because even now, Toby was still holding on to Abby's hair with his hand. Seeing this, she went ahead and grabbed onto Toby's hair, pulling it. "Didn't anyone ever teach you? You should never touch a girl's hair without her permission," Minnie shouted. The cries from Toby continued. "Call the teacher! Someone help me before she kills me!" Toby shouted. Minnie lifted her other hand and swung it down, hitting Toby right in the elbow, popping and breaking the joint there as well. It had forced his hand open, up, and finally, Abby was let free from his grasp. As she fell to the floor at that moment, finally being free, she fainted, lying there on the ground. Seeing this, Minnie had thought the worst. No, this is just like Sunny. This is what happened to her." The image of Abby on the floor reminded her of the last time she had seen this scene. The other person had never gotten back up again. Seeing this, there were no words spoken, and instead a red aura covered Minnie's hand, as she went and threw it out right toward Toby's face. Toby was helpless to do anything against the attack, and uncontrollably, a warm substance started to come from a certain area. When he blinked, he thought it was the end, but opening his eyes again, he could see a taller person standing in front of him and holding on to the fist. "Jared, she is fine," Heeb shouted, who was on the ground by Abby's side. "She just passed out." One of the older students, who had been getting the attention of many of the kids in the playground, was holding on to Minnie's punch, but it had taken him 2 hands to stop the attack. "Did you hear that?" Jared said. "Your friend is okay. You don't have to worry anymore. You don't have to get revenge, okay? If you go any further than this, then your family will get in trouble. Do you understand?" Hearing the words family and in trouble, it had quelled Minnie's anger, and it soon turned to panic. "Oh no, what did I do?" Minnie said. "Dad and Mommy are going to be so angry with me." Minnie started to cry on the spot. Jared found the scene weird. There was this little vampire, clearly young and immature, yet she had great strength. Originally, he thought to block the hit with one hand, but getting close, he could sense the aura was too much, and there was the need to use both his hands. Little did Jared know, Minnie was still sticking to the rules that her father had set out for her, of using a maximum of 10% of her strength. A few moments later, it looked like 3 of the teachers had come running out onto the playground, looking at the scene in front of them. Jared had asked one of the older students in his class to call the teacher, just in case things got out of hand. When the teachers arrived, though, they were a bit perplexed at what they could see. One of the boys looked to have gotten seriously injured, beyond what would be expected of a playground scuffle. One of the teachers, a male who went by the name Mr. Kripe, was in charge of the older students and was head of the teachers, one of the higher positions in the school. He had gray hair, which was colored, but he seemed to like the older look, even though his facial appearance put him in his late 30s. "For something like this to happen on the first day, the parents aren't going to be pleased about this," Mr. Kripe mumbled. "Quickly, take the student to the infirmary. Also, all students that are involved in this will be taken out of lessons and are to report what happened immediately. We will get to the bottom of this, and for those of you who think this is a small matter and are thinking of doing the same, we will be informing your families." Minnie had stopped crying and instead gulped because she was more afraid of what her parents would do than what the school would. The students that had been declared involved in the event were Abby, Minnie, Toby, Heeb, and lastly Jared as well. They had all been brought to the head teacher's office. It was stationed in a section of the school where only the teachers were meant to be. It was where their offices were located and where they planned lessons and so on. The word had spread around quite fast since it was the first day. At the same time, there was quite a panic because before an investigation had even begun, the teachers were background checking the students, trying to figure out who belonged to which family and who their parents were.
Dear listener,
Gunlog looked just like the last time Sonny had seen him, like a golden demon born of some harrowing hell. The bright lord was tall and had broad, powerful shoulders. His body was clad in a strange armor that seemed to be made out of molten gold. It was both solid and liquid, flowing over his mighty muscles and covering him from head to toe. Not even Gunlog's eyes were exposed. In the place where his face should have been, there was nothing but a smooth and empty expanse of polished gold. The great hall of the bright castle reflected in it, and all the people gathered there did too. As soon as Sonny saw the golden mask, he felt the oppressive aura that radiated from the bright lord. Even knowing what was going to happen, he couldn't help but shake a little and bite his lip. He tasted blood. The mind assault of the golden armor was truly hard to endure. Even with the protection of the puppeteer's shroud, he felt it pressing on him, making it hard to breathe. Deep inside, a primal bestial fear was clawing at his heart. But this fear did not belong to him. It was fake. With a dark grimace, Sonny strangled it and made it disappear. Walking out of the darkness of the alcove like a golden apparition, Gunlog glanced at the mass of people below him and sat on the throne. His pose was relaxed and casual, as though he was here to leisurely resolve a trivial matter, not decide someone's fate. Hundreds of fates, perhaps. However, despite his laid-back attitude, everyone gathered in the great hall swayed a little, pressed down to the ground by the incredible force of his presence. The bright lord lingered for a few moments, seeming to relish in the discomfort he brought upon his subjects. He finally broke the silence, his serpentine voice full of mirth. What a sight. All my precious swords gathered here, united in the desire to see justice prevail. This dedication, this fervor for the rule of law, oh, it just makes my blood sing with anticipation. Don't you think it's wonderful? He laughed and turned his head slightly, peering directly at Nephis. She lowered her head a bit, an almost imperceptible tremor running through her body. To Sonny, though, it seemed as though the plates of marble beneath her feet were about to crack from the terrifying pressure of Gunlog's gaze. Nevertheless, she endured it without showing much of the tremendous strain she was under. The bright lord paused, and then echoed his words, a note of some dark emotion finding its way into his voice. Don't you think it's wonderful? Changing star of the immortal Flame Clan. Nephis gritted her teeth, struggling to remain steady under the psychic onslaught of the golden armor. Sonny noticed her eyes narrowing ever so slightly. It was as close to a glare as she was going to allow herself under such circumstances. When she finally answered, her voice sounded suppressed. Indeed. Gunlog remained silent for a bit. Although his face was hidden behind the golden mask, Sonny had a feeling that he was smiling. Finally, he spoke. How nice. Somehow I was under the impression that you would disagree. I've been told by my most loyal aides that you are a disagreeable person. I guess you just can't trust anyone these days. With that, he glanced at his lieutenants, making them pale and shiver. Sonny shivered too. The message hidden in those words was clear. Gunlog was letting Nephis know that he had known she had a spy among the highest ranks of his people all along. And he didn't care. Perhaps he even allowed it to happen as some kind of sick sadistic power move. Sonny clenched his jaw, holding in the questions swirling in his head. Damnation. How much did he know? Finally, the bright lord looked at Effie. After a few seconds had passed in tense silence, he spoke to her with a hint of sadness. We meet again, Effie. What a shame that it is in these tragic circumstances. If only you had listened to me and joined the host. Perhaps then you might not have fallen so low. Such pity. He shook his head and sighed. I had high hopes for you. But alas, murdering innocent humans is not something that can be tolerated or forgiven. happens when people refuse my grace. They become no better than nightmare creatures. His somber words echoed in the silence of the great hall, making people lower their gazes. Effie trembled, pressed down by the force of his undivided attention. But then, she grinned and answered, her raspy voice sounding relaxed and carefree. She only said 2 words. Fuck off. Gunlog laughed and raised his hands in a helpless gesture. I rest my case. You all see how unrepentant this vile murderer is. Is there not a drop of remorse left in her corrupted, rotten soul? That is why, with a heavy heart, I have to sentence this once promising young woman to death. She has to answer for her crimes, and leaving her alive would put you, my wards, in danger. I'm left with no choice. A hum of voices rose above the crowd. Slum dweller or an inhabitant of the castle, everyone was affected by his last words. Don't you dare, bastard! Kill that murderer! Effie, we're here! Make her pay. Lady Nephis, you can't let them! Kill her. Kill all of them. Unaffected by this outburst of boiling emotions, Nephis put a hand on Effie's shoulder and looked at the Bright Lord with a cold expression. Staring directly at the golden mask, she frowned and said, her voice clear and loud, I object. The storm of voices suddenly grew quiet. Everyone turned to her, 2 kinds of expectation hiding in their eyes. One was full of hope. The other was full of vicious glee. Gunlog tilted his head. Object? What do you mean? Her guilt has been proven without any room left for doubt. There is nothing you can do to change the outcome. He paused for a moment, and then suddenly leaned forward, his insidious voice washing over the great hall like a wave. Well, unless, of course. Changing Star looked at him with dark resolve and lowered her chin stubbornly. Her expression sent a shiver down his back. On anyone else, it would have been filled with unbridled rage, a death glare. She knew he was baiting her, and she loathed him for it. But she also planned for this. Sonny knew it. Then, Nephis said, I want to invoke the right of challenge. An echoing silence fell on the great hall of the ancient castle. The fateful words had been spoken, and now there was no turning back. For better or for worse. Gunlog tilted his head and stayed quiet for a few moments. Then, the sound of his laughter rolled over the crowd. The right of challenge. Oh, that old thing. You are awfully fond of that tradition, it seems. Not even a full year since you have arrived under my roof, and I had the pleasure of hearing you say those words twice. Insolent girl. He paused for a few moments, and then leaned forward. His voice suddenly turned cold, full of dark undertones. To be honest, I am very tired of your insolence, Changing Star. Before Nephis could answer, the Bright Lord suddenly rose from his throne, towering above the crowd like a statue cast from pure gold. Then, he took a leisurely step forward and began descending the stairs of the dais. With each step, the sound of his serpentine voice resounded, growing lower and lower, until it turned into a fiendish, wrathful growl. Your little games were fun at first, but the more I observed your clumsy attempts at playing the hero, the more disgusted I became. couldn't believe how naive, self-righteous, and stupid you turned out to be. It made me sick. It made me want to do things that I promised myself to never do again. I expected better from the daughter of the immortal flame. Disappoint me so thoroughly. His growl reverberated through the great hall, and then abruptly disappeared. A moment later, Gunlog suddenly threw his head back and laughed brightly. Oh, but then it hit me. I was such a fool. You fooled me so beautifully. Brilliantly done, Changing Star. Please, do accept my compliment. After I saw the real you. It was such a joy to watch your performances. He left the stairs and stepped on the marble floor of the throne room. The crowd of the castle inhabitants parted in front of him, people hurrying to get as far away from the oppressive aura of the golden armor as they could. The Bright Lord sighed. It's such a shame that all of this will have to stop now. You see, well, I can't help but applaud your effort. In the end, you still turned out to be just another fool. Sonny's brows furrowed. How aware of Nephis's plans was Gunlog? Did he have the same reservations Sonny had before? The thought that he could have anything in common with this tyrant made Sonny's stomach roil in displeasure. He glanced at Effie and asked, his voice full of mockery. A challenge? I don't think it's your place to demand such a thing. You are not the one accused of the crime, after all. If someone has to invoke the right of challenge, it should be Effie herself. Don't you think? Nephis gritted her teeth, struggling to remain poised under the assault of the psychic pressure. Refusing to turn away from the polished mirror of the Bright Lord's face, she said, It's just like one of your minions said. I am responsible for the actions of my people. Any crime they commit is my crime as well. Gunlog watched her, his expression hidden. Nephis's pale face was reflected in his mask, staring back at her with merciless gray eyes. After a while, he spoke. Sound logic. Who are you going to challenge then? She hesitated for a few moments, then said steadily, Whoever it was that passed the guilty verdict. The Bright Lord chuckled. Oh, but by the same logic, that would be me. She smiled darkly and glared at him, white flames dancing in her eyes. Then you are the one I challenge. Her words resounded in the great hall, sending hundreds of people gathered there into a state of stunned shock. Sonny bowed his head, steeling himself, preparing himself. So, this is it. Sonny looked at the crowd of stunned people, mentally separating them into two groups, those who were going to be a threat, and those who were not. Regardless of how the fight between Nephis and Gunlog ended, the small enclave of humans living in the Dark City was going to descend into utter chaos. If Changing Star was killed, her followers would make her into a martyr and go completely insane. They were already poised, ready to riot. The host would not just let them off either. If the Bright Lord fell, no matter how much of a bastard Gunlog was, he was also the glue that held this whole place together. Without a tyrant enforcing some semblance of order, no matter how ghoulish, things were going to get very ugly very fast. Who would be able to stop the nightmare creatures from wiping the humans out then? If there were any humans left by the end of this. In any case, there was going to be a bloodbath. But Sonny was done worrying about these matters. In the upcoming mayhem, Sonny's goals were the same as they were when he set foot back into this cursed castle. Remain alive, protect Nephis, make sure that she becomes the new tyrant of the Dark City. Then, she could carve out a way back to reality for a few lucky survivors. If she doesn't die right here and now, of course. In the silence that enveloped the Great Hall, the Bright Lord laughed and tilted his head, staring at Changing Star from behind his golden mask. Then, he spoke.
How audacious. I wonder, what gives you the confidence to dare challenge me? Various people have tried to kill me, you know. I have a little hobby, actually, collecting their skulls. Come to think of it, your pretty head would be a beautiful addition to my collection.
Suddenly, he raised a hand and gestured to his forehead.
Don't tell me. Don't tell me that it's all because of that little toy that you took off the First Lord's corpse. Oh no, that would be terrible. You didn't really think that one powerful memory would be enough to defeat me.
Nephis lingered for a while, glaring at Gunlog. Then, she said evenly, "My bare hands would be enough to defeat a worm like you. The memory is just to make it quicker." Gunlog stared at her for a moment, and then chuckled.
Great. This is great. Such spirit. If you rolled over too fast, where would the fun be in that? I will really enjoy breaking you. Changing Star, when this is done, when you are at my mercy, oh, no. A quick death? That would be too good for you. And where's the fun in that?
He flexed his shoulders and said, his voice sending shivers into the hearts of hundreds of people gathered in the hall.
All right. I accept your challenge.
The great hall of the bright castle grew silent and still. However, that stillness was not tranquil, but like a predator that fell low to the ground, ready to explode into a violent lunge and tear its prey apart. The sleepers pressed themselves against the walls, giving Changing Star and the Bright Lord space for their battle. Effie was dragged away from the middle of the hall by two guards, and now there was nothing but emptiness separating the two fighters. From one side of the hall, the five lieutenants, James, Trent, Keto, Shan, and Horace, were looking at their master with complicated emotions. On the other side of it, Kai, Castor, and the leaders of the outer settlement hunting parties were doing the same. Cassia was also there, her hand resting on the hilt of the quiet dancer. There was a grim, somber expression on her beautiful face. Sonny glanced at the blind girl, and then turned to the center of the throne room. Two people were standing opposite each other there. One was a tall man, encased in a strange golden carapace that followed the lines of his mighty body. The other was a young woman in an elegant plate armor, forged of white metal. There was a subtle similarity between them. Both were emanating a striking, compelling sense of power and confidence that very few people ever possessed. Both were fearsome and deadly. Both were at the apex of their kind. However, this was where the similarity ended. "This does not look good," Sonny thought, evaluating the two fighters. He knew better than anyone what Nephis was capable of, but even then, The sight of her facing Gunlog made a deep scowl appear on her face. The Bright Lord was much taller than her, and weighed probably twice as much as Changing Star. He was stronger, had longer reach, and had much more experience in slaughtering people. That was not even considering that damned golden armor of his. Even with the miraculous augmentation of the Dawn Shard, Neff's silver sword could barely be considered at the same power level as an ascended weapon would have been. That was still a whole rank below Gunlog's strange echo. Trying to break through that armor was going to be as hard as cracking the shell of a Carapace centurion with a sword forged for mundane steel. Incredibly hard, if not impossible. And unlike the carapace of a scavenger, the golden echo did not seem to have a weak spot. At least, not one that Sunny could see from this distance. At that moment, sparks of light appeared in the air in front of Changing Star. The silver longsword appeared in her hand, and she pointed it to the ground. For now. Sunny narrowed his eyes at Gunlog and thought, "What weapon is that bastard going to use?" That would decide a lot. Sunny was sure that Gunlog possessed an arsenal of powerful memory weapons. But how powerful were they exactly? He glanced at the Bright Lord, expecting to see the same sparks swirling around his hands. However, there were none. Instead, the liquid gold flowed forward and assumed the shape of a heavy battle axe, which Gunlog then grasped and leisurely put on his shoulder. The polished mirror of his mask reflected the slight frown that appeared on Neff's face. A lump formed in Sunny's throat. Damn it. The weapon the Bright Lord was going to use was also a part of his echo, and as such, possessed the quality of a transcended weapon. It was going to cut through the Star Legion armor without much effort. Sunny's gut twisted into knots. This is even worse than I imagined. As Sunny gritted his teeth, Gunlog said in a serpentine, insidious voice,
Any last words, Changing Star?
Nephis tilted her head a little and remained silent for a while. Her helmet weaved itself from strings of light, hiding her face completely, with only calm gray eyes visible through the crack of the visor. Finally, she answered with only one word, her usually even voice, full of furious contempt. Traitor. A wave of whispers spread through the crowd. People were guessing what exactly she meant by that, but Sunny suspected that he was the only one who knew. Had Gunlog even truly known what Nephis was accusing him of? Or had he settled into this life of a tyrant and completely forgotten his training and life before? Was there anything left for him to return to in the real world? Or was he running from that too? Nephis wasn't accusing Gunlog of betraying his fellow humans or causing the deaths of numerous young men and women. She was accusing him of betraying the true duty of the Awakened and submitting to the nightmare spell instead of fighting it to the bitter end. In her mind, that was a far greater crime. The only crime, even. Sunny remembered the details of Neff's first nightmare. What she had to walk away from. She resisted the pull, the seduction of comfort, for what she knew was right. Gunlog had let himself be swayed by even less. The Bright Lord laughed.
That's too bad. I heard that one before.
And then, without wasting even a fraction of a second, he suddenly exploded forward in a terrifying lightning-fast lunge. The shift between peace and violence was so instant and swift that most people gathered in the Great Hall did not even realize what was happening until a few moments later. With each of Gunlog's strides, the floor of the throne room shook a little. He flew at Nephis like a furious giant made of gold, swinging his battle axe with both incredible agility and horrible force. She barely reacted in time, shifting her body and raising the sword to deflect the killing blow to the side. However, then, something unexpected happened. The shaft of the battle axe suddenly elongated, the liquid gold comprising it flowing forward to assume a new shape. As a result, her deflection ended up being almost useless. Almost. With an awkward stagger, Changing Star reeled back. The very edge of the battle axe's blade bit into the helmet of the Starlight Legion armor and effortlessly cleaved through it, leaving a shallow cut on her cheek. In the next moment, Gunlog's foot crashed into her ribs, sending the young woman flying through the air. Nephis landed in a roll and used one hand to stop herself from sliding on the marble floor. As drops of blood fell from beneath her helmet, merciless white flames ignited in her eyes. A moment later, she jumped forward and met the onslaught of the Bright Lord with an equal amount of fury. The deadly song of clashing steel resounded in the ancient hall, like a promise of much greater bloodshed yet to come.
Boo! Ready for a frightfully good time? Pocket FM's Spooktacular deal.
The breastplate of Neff's armor cracked from the force of Gunlog's blow, and there was blood streaming from beneath her helmet. But that didn't slow Changing Star one bit. Jumping forward to meet the Bright Lord's assault, she dodged the blade of the battle axe, twisted, and tried to deliver a strike of her own. A furious clangor of metal exploded in the silence of the Great Hall, both fighters moving with incredible speed, precision, and skill. In a span of only a few seconds, they exchanged numerous blows, but each was either deflected, dodged, or blocked. This terrifying clash was not at all like Sunny had imagined. There was nothing elegant, graceful, or elevated about it. All there was barbarous violence and cruel brutality. Each of the fighters doing everything in their power to break, cripple, and kill their opponent. Their voices sounded like that of wild beasts, particularly from the incredible strain of the duel, but also to let out the suffocating bloodlust and murderous intent that were drowning their minds. That was not to say that any one of them had lost control of their thoughts and actions. Both were cold-blooded killers and knew how to remain calm in the throes of the most terrible rage. A few seconds later, Gunlog and Nephis disengaged and staggered away from each other, letting the spectators draw in shaky breaths. It was a tense reprieve from the battle, a moment that stretched on, feeling like an eternity. The Bright Lord's golden armor was pristine and unscathed. Nephis, however, had several bloody cuts on her body, the black material encompassing it torn and ripped. Another crack appeared on one of her pauldrons. She glanced at it briefly, and then indifferently turned back to watch her enemy. Sunny's brow furrowed. What was she doing? Everyone in the throne room, in one way or another, was thinking about the same thing. A cold and sickening feeling slowly spreading through their chests. How would they fare in such a fight themselves? The answer was simple. They would have been long dead, eviscerated in mere seconds by one of these awesome fighters. Everyone felt death breathing down their necks. Among all the people watching their fight, however, there were two who observed Changing Star's every move with a special kind of attention. They were Sunny and Castor. Their reasons for studying how Nephis fought were entirely different, but also almost the same. After just a second of rest, the two fighters lunged at each other once again. This time, however, their behavior was different. The first clash was just a test to gauge what the enemy was capable of. Now, they were not holding anything back, throwing everything they had at the enemy. At least, that was how it seemed. Changing Star's sword suddenly flashed with brilliant radiance, Removing one hand from the hilt, she grasped the incandescent blade with her armored gauntlet at the middle to better control its tip and raised it to shoulder level. With Gunlog's ability to change the length of his weapon at will and almost impregnable armor, this grip was more advantageous. The Bright Lord absorbed the battle axe back into his armor. Then, two straight blades grew out of his forearms, creating weapons that resembled long, heavy punching daggers. They clashed once again, this time with even more fury. The people pressing themselves into the walls of the throne room trembled. Nephis seemed to abandon a lot of her defense, willing to take much bigger risks to obliterate the enemy. The reach of her sword was much shorter now, but the silver blade also grew much more agile and unpredictable. Gunlog's daggers were a true menace to resist, however. They flew at her from all sides, either in tandem or in a staggered rhythm, making it hard for the young woman to predict and deflect each blow. But she wasn't trying to. Changing Star seemed willing to receive many shallow wounds to get a chance to land a strike on her opponent. More bloody lacerations appeared on her body, the Starlight Legion armor barely holding together. But she achieved her goal in the end. Catching one of Gunlog's daggers between the blade of her sword and her body, she forcefully twisted the sword sideways and caused him to turn his torso. Then, Nephis sidestepped and suddenly appeared behind the Bright Lord, with a fraction of a second left before he could turn around and defend himself. Her incandescent sword finished its arc high above her head, and, changing back to the standard grip, she brought it down with all her strength on Gunlog's shoulder. The radiant white blade flashed through the air and bit into the golden armor. And then, it slid fruitlessly off its bright surface, not leaving even a scratch on it. Sonny balled his hands into fists at his side. Damn it all! In the next moment, Gunlog threw the sword to the side with one arm and delivered a terrifying blow with the other. His dagger aimed at Neff's face. She managed to turn her head at the last moment, avoiding instant death, but was still caught by the enemy's fist. The impact was so strong, the Changing Star was thrown backward several meters. The helmet had shattered completely, revealing a pale, bloodied face, with bits of metal piercing the skin. She rolled several times and came to a stop, then rose to her feet with some effort. The white flames dimmed a little, and there was a dark, disoriented emotion in her eyes. The gem of the Dawn Shard shone gently right above them, illuminating Neff's wounded face. A moment later, she dismissed what little remained of the helmet and stared at Gunlog with resentment, blood running from the cuts on her cheeks. The Bright Lord laughed and made a step toward Changing Star, his voice echoing under the roof of the Great Hall like a death sentence.
What? That was all? Are you surrendering? Is this all the great Changing Star has to offer?
Nephis did not answer. Instead, she placed both hands on the blade of her sword, holding it with its hilt and crossguard up like a makeshift mace. The radiance of the silver sword spread to encompass all of it. But it didn't stop there. Sonny opened his eyes wide. What? The furious white flames spread from the sword to Changing Star's hands and her arms, and then devoured her figure completely. But they weren't burning in the white, cracked metal of the Starlight Legion armor. Instead, the brilliant radiance was emanating from her skin. Sonny stared at the shining figure in front of him, a myriad of thoughts appearing in his mind. With her skin emanating blinding white radiance, Nephis looked beautiful and pure, as though
It's the October savings event at Maine's #1 kid.
angel that descended into the mortal realm. The sight of it was both breathtaking and terrifying. It was also eerily similar to the image of the radiant creature he had seen on the walls of the ancient mine, especially with the gem of the dawn shard burning on Neff's forehead like a third eye. But that wasn't what gave Sonny pause. He muttered in shock, "How is that possible?" But then, why wouldn't it be possible? At the start of their journey, he had guessed that Changing Star's aspect was of the divine rank, just like his. Her powers seemed to be able to either augment memories or heal, while his own could be used to scout, enhance memories, or augment Sonny himself. Because Nephis had never used the white flames to achieve that last effect, he had assumed that she was incapable of doing so, and thus her aspect, while powerful, was less versatile. But augmenting herself was exactly what Neph was doing right now. Sonny knew it instantly. She wrapped her body in light, just like he had wrapped his own body in the shadow countless times. With this enhancement, her physical prowess had to grow exponentially. Had she always been capable of doing so, and hid that facet of her aspect intentionally? Or was this something she learned how to do only after growing more powerful and absorbing hundreds upon hundreds of soul shards in the labyrinth? That question was going to remain unanswered, at least for now, because the battle between Changing Star and the Bright Lord was far from over. Just like Sonny suspected, with her body wreathed in light, Nephis suddenly became much stronger and faster. If before, she was visibly weaker and slower than Gunlog, even if not by much, now it seemed the other way around. She dashed towards the enemy and batted away one of the daggers. Nephis charged forward and delivered a crushing blow right to the polished mirror mask. This time, there was a slight mark left on the surface of the golden armor by her sword. The two of them became locked in a ferocious battle, dozens of attacks flying at each fighter. The clanging of metal grew in volume, turning into an almost deafening cacophony. Changing Star was fighting with abandon, more and more wounds accumulating on her radiant body. However, she also managed to land several more blows, each striking at the golden armor of the Bright Lord's face. Slowly, a hint of a crack started to appear on its surface. Sonny also noticed that her wounds weren't healing. It seemed as if Nephis was only capable of supporting two effects at the same time, one augmenting her sword, the other her body. To summon the healing power of the white flame, she had to sacrifice one or the other, but she was unwilling to. A few moments later, it seemed as though Gunlog was slowly starting to lose ground. His enemy was just too fast, powerful, and ferocious. More and more strikes landed on the golden armor, and although it seemed to hold, for now, it was clear that the continuous blows were taking a toll on both the Bright Lord and his echo. However, the Golden Serpent had a few tricks up his sleeve too. When the momentum of the fight began to favor Nephis, he suddenly chuckled and turned his face to catch her reflection in the mirror mask. A second later, the sound of muffled groans could be heard escaping from the mouths of hundreds of people. The psychic pressure emanated by the Bright Lord suddenly increased manifold, throwing some people to the ground and making others stagger. Sonny saw blood flowing from people's noses, eyes, and mouths. He himself also felt it and gritted his teeth. Struggling to remain standing, he almost fainted. Changing Star, who was at the center and the true target of the mental assault,